And my father, however, he was an old soldier, man. That guy, he never told me he was sick. I knew he was sick because I could see him starting to fail, but he never told me. And so I was very fortunate. About a month before he passed away, I was fortunate. I was very fortunate. About a month before he passed away, I was fortunate enough to go on a road trip with him. We were driving from my home in Wyoming down to South Florida, where he lived, and he was staying with his sister. And we're driving, and we got 3 days to catch up on conversations. And I asked my dad, and probably a bit flippantly, I said, "Dad, what is the greatest threat to humanity?" And I was thinking to myself, maybe it's some sort of pandemic or disease, or maybe it's, who knows what, terrorism, right? And
Hmm.
my father looked at me and he thought for a second and he said, "Corruption." And I said, "Corruption? Like financial corruption?" He said, "No, son, corruption. Corruption is the act of when you give up or trade one's own values in exchange for something else, right? Your branch, judicial branch. That's kind of how it works. As for me, my consultation has primarily been in the executive branch when asked, and I will continue to advise the government when asked to do it. I don't actively look to do it, but if they need my help, I will do it, and I have done it. Um, as a consultant, it is a contract considered paranormal. Now, the Department of Veterans Affairs actually prescribes acupuncture for some of our wounded veterans, right? It's no longer in the realm of paranormal. It's actually therapeutic. So we have to understand that when we say things like poltergeists or whatever labeled this way or that way, or what mom and dad told you around the dinner table. So by definition, we are biased. Every single person has a bias. You can pretend that you don't, but we all do, whether it's the flavor ice cream or what type of book you like to read. So we all have a level of bias. So when we look at something, especially as it deals, I think, in the spiritual world, um, there are things that we will consider normal, and there are things that we'll consider not normal, right? And I don't think everything is based technologically speaking. I think there's a lot of about human psychology, human sociology, not a technological thing.
It depends on what we mean by technology. Like we can think of a leaf that aspirin
Sure.
was derived from as a technology. And also in the case of acupuncture, it's my understanding that if you do sham acupuncture, that the effects nullify. It's you thinking you have acupuncture.
I think, if I were to tell you, hey, you're going to have a green orb of light in your house today or tonight, there might be some element of fear. But if you're just sitting down watching TV, not expecting it, and boom, it just goes by, I'm not sure there's even time to have fear. It's kind of just as,
Oh,
wow, that's
how quick was it then?
slow. Maybe, gosh, let's say this phone fuel rod is it? Boy, it's hard to
Huh.
like that all the way down the hall. I mean, enough where like walking speed, sometimes like a fast walking speed, like kind of a brisk walking speed. It never,
So
it
interesting.
never hung around. It didn't loiter. It didn't come up to your face. It didn't scan anything. It was just in the house, and it would go right through a wall or right through a door without making a. No, it's interesting, but most people just look at say, "Oh, that's curiosity, right? That's wow, interesting." It was the same thing with us. There wasn't necessarily a desire to set up a bunch of cameras because you never knew where it was going to appear. I could put 10 cameras in the hallway. Go ahead.
It didn't occur to you to set up cameras and then you said no. It just never occurred to you. The
No,
thought.
because it wasn't alarming to us. It was curious. I was curious. We were curious about it, but you didn't know where it was going to appear. Right, sometime in a hallway, sometimes in the kitchen. I mean, I can't put 1,000 cameras around the house and hope that I'm going to, have every single one of them on all the time. Hope to capture something. It wasn't that big of a deal to us. It was just,
Hmm.
oh, it's curious.
Why do you think they no longer appear unless they
Oh,
do?
I have no idea. No, they don't, and I don't know why, and I couldn't tell you why. And it was episodic. Um,
Hmm.
again, it's bizarre, but it could have a completely natural explanation. That's why I'm very careful not to, because that is also a very real fear that I've had. That if I step over, I know there's people watching every day, every
You
word I
still
say.
have?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. If I say something that I'm not supposed to, I will be in big trouble. So I'm very, very conscious about what I can and can't say. Probably almost paranoid about it because I am very very conscientious about that. And also, I don't want to compromise national security. That's never been my intent. But my point being is that once it comes back from the Pentagon, not only are these my words and my experiences, but now it's an endorsement by the government to say I can actually talk about it. Now, did they still redact information? They did. Even though I made every effort to try to make this book completely unclassified, there were still sections that the government found was too sensitive, and they redacted. But I left those redactions so that anybody reading the book can see there are sections there. They're just black lines that the government has written. So the Pentagon freely without worrying about losing your security clearance or, having a forced psychological evaluation. So I think it's getting easier. I have a lot of support when I go to the Pentagon now. People before who would never even want to look at me, wouldn't want to associate with me. People are coming up and shaking my hand in some cases and saying, "Hey, thank you for having this conversation." It's a word for like the sun. That was the shape of the Roman shields. And so they described these flaming Roman shields that were following them from battle space to battle space. You have, of course, in Germany, in Nuremberg in the 1500s, the famous incident where the entire village witnessed what appeared to be, some describe it as a dogfight. Well, guess what? That's kidnapping. Okay, that's a felony offense. And by the way, God forbid you were touched, without your permission. Well, that's assault. Okay, so we can start racking up the felony charges here, right? That's not a good thing. So to go back to your question, is this a threat or is it not a threat? The fact that we don't know, that means we need to find out. And in order to find out, we have to treat it as a potential threat until we know that it's not, if that makes sense.
If they have been around for tens of thousands of years, maybe even longer, why doesn't that factor into their safety? So, for instance, Richard Dawkins is known for the parasite theory of religion, that it's a mind virus, but he becomes more and more incorrect the longer timescale that a particular religion has been around, because if it's been around for millennia, then there's something mutual about it. If there's a virus and it kills your host, it's not good for the virus. So, if these beings or whatever powers.
Uh, I love my children are the greatest achievement and accomplishment of my life. There will never be anything I will ever come close to than that achievement and that accomplishment. But my love is so strong for them. I also want to protect them and insulate them from some of the badness of this world. So, do you make the decision and not allow someone to exist because you love them so much and you're trying to protect them? Who took the same allegiance and oath that I did would do the same thing. I'm not special, and I'm not even particularly good at it, to be honest with you. I'm just trying my best. So, um, yeah, I don't know what the end looks like. I would love it if one day someone came to me and knocked on my door and said, "Hey, Lou, we'll take it from here." Hallelujah. Thank you. I can, change my name and get weird and disappear. I don't know, but until that, I can't. There's knowledge that you have. There's intellectual capability that you have that I don't have. And just like an experience, I have experiences in the government that maybe you don't have, right? So we're coming at it from different perspectives.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's what works. And that's the difference between a show like yours and a show like, some other folks. Again, I'm not hitting on those other shows that do that. But I think we get further in the conversation with shows like you have. And what does that disclosure look like? I don't know if you're ever going to be able to sit there and have a government sourced video of a UFO landing on the White House lawn. But then again, maybe that's not what's needed. The fact that we have already acknowledged the existence of something there that's not our technology and probably not adversarial technology, well, that's a pretty big step. Literally ripped away space and time to a nonsensical state, right? But Einstein said there's nothing in the universe that could actually do that, right? So it's just theoretical, but it doesn't exist. When was the first time we were actually able to prove the existence, not just through observation, the existence of a black hole and the fact that gravitational waves, that space and time itself, the ripple of space and time, can be measured, and that all that was absolutely true. Do you remember when that occurred? So that was through the LIGOS experiment, and the LIGOS was a laser interferometer where you had two of these sensors separated by quite a bit of a distance, and they did meditate, brother. I got too much going on up here.
Okay.
I wish I could. People would say, "Oh man, you got to meditate." I when I'm not drinking coffee and I'm not running a million miles an hour, I'm sleeping. Or I do hit the gym. Obviously, I do work out quite a bit. That's kind of my thing. Maybe that's meditation for the body. But no, I don't.
How about remote viewing? Do you still engage in remote viewing?
I will just simply say yes, and I don't want to expound upon that. It's a topic that some people have trouble digesting, and I get it, and it's very controversial. But that's for another conversation. And fortunately, it looks like our time is up.
Well, okay.
No, I'm just
Right, so-
come on, I'm just jerking your chain, man.
Okay, geez, Louis.
No.
Man. Look, it's just me and you here, Lou, and maybe 1 million other people.
Yeah.
So
People are clinically dead or not when they've died in a hospital is their brainwave function. And some are now saying, well, the brains can give off frequencies that we can actually detect. Is it possible that there are some people that can receive those and interpret those frequencies? I don't know. I'm not a medical scientist. I'm certainly not a neurologist. So I would be completely speaking out of context. But my point is, I think when you get into the conversation of remote viewing and nonverbal communication, I'm pretty confident it's based in science. I'm pretty confident it's not mumbo jumbo, weird woo woo stuff. That at the end of the day, it's probably somewhere embedded within the field of quantum mechanics. These Morgellon fibers, when under scrutiny, don't seem to have any DNA. Some have said that they're fibers from carpet, that they're artificial fibers or blue and red fibers, but these were not carpet fibers. This was removed from underneath the skin of an individual with a chip, and those fibers can be clearly seen. More, I think, alarming is the fact that one of the forensic pathologists that was looking at this sample said that it had its own metabolism, meaning it still moved underneath the microscope when they were studying it.
sorry, what's the definition of metabolism being used here?
So anything that is alive gets its energy. Usually, we consider, for example, human beings and animals through the ATP, ADP process, adenosine triphosphate to adenosine diphosphate. When you cleave one of those phosphates, you create energy. It's all part of the Krebs cycle, what they call citric acid cycle.
Sure.
And that is a metabolism, basically. That is how we derive energy from consumption, right?